Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. Today, we're going to look at the weekend box office, and we're going to look at some numbers that I didn't have when I did my Oscar recap, which are the ratings for this year, a reversal of a trend, and not, I think, the way that the Academy would want. We're going to break that down and a lot more. You'll excuse a little grogginess on my part. I don't bounce back from those all-nighters like I used to after getting that recap video done, so I'm a little bit weary today, but you know me, I'm always excited by numbers because I'm a big old nerd. So let's start off the show with the look at the box office for Oscar weekend. While everybody was giving themselves trophies in Hollywood, there were still movies in theaters. And for the third straight week, Captain America Brave New World was at number one. It dropped 47.3%, which is an okay drop. I mean, not great considering it had a big week 2 drop. It brought in $14.8 million. Its total now is at $163.5 million. Last Breath debuted in second place with $7.8 million. That bumps The Monkey to number 3. It had a 54.2% drop in weekend number 2, which honestly, for a horror movie, isn't that bad. $6.4 million. It's brought in $24.6 million so far domestically. Paddington in Peru had a 30.5% drop in week number 3. It brought in $4.5 million. Its domestic total is now at $31.3 million. Dogman stays in the top 5 in its 5th week of release, a 27.5% drop for a $4.2 million weekend. Its domestic total now at $84.1 million. Mufasa the Lion King actually moved up one spot from the previous week. It's at number 6, a 21.6% drop in its 11th week of release for a $1.9 million weekend. Its domestic total is approaching $250 million, and right now it is tied for longest run in the top 10 for a 2024 release, alongside Inside Out and Moana 2. So if it sticks around one more week, it will have been in the top 10 longer than any other movie that was released in 2024. Its legs are also currently at almost 7 times its opening weekend, which is the best of any movie this year. Naja 2 stays in the top 10 for a third week. That is a rarity for an international film. It had a 44% drop, brought in about $1.7 million. Its domestic total is now at $17.9 million, so I guess those fraudulent box office numbers are infiltrating domestic box office too. Hard Eyes is in 8th place. It dropped 51.9% to bring in $1.3 million. Its domestic total now nearing $30 million. The Unbreakable Boy dropped 47.3%. It brought in $1.2 million for a $4.5 million domestic total. And rounding out the top 10 is One of Them Days for a 7th week in the top 10. It brought in just under $1 million. Its total is now at $47.4 million. Speaking of legs, it's now done 4 times its opening weekend, nearly $50 million domestically off a budget of $14 million. So that is an early year success story for a low budget film that has done well at the box office. Dropping out of the top 10 is Chava, the film from India. It's out after 2 weeks. And when we look at the biggest theater count changes for the previous weekend, Love Hurts lost about half of its remaining theaters. It's still in 1,212. Hard Eyes lost 597 theaters, but it's still in over 2,400. Anora actually added 400 theaters in the weekend preceding the Academy Awards, so it is in as wide a release right now as it has been since last fall. I have to compliment Neon, their release strategy on the movie, bringing it back out around the Oscars, giving it this big theatrical window. I think they've done really well by the film. It will be premiering on physical media and streaming in a couple weeks, I believe. Companion loses another 50% or so of its theaters. It lost 327. It's now in just 336. And Captain America Brave New World began shedding theaters. It lost 305 of them. It's still in 3,800 total. Looking at what I like to call our road to recovery, the red line is the box office weekend average for 2021 to 2024. The blue line is the average from 2015 to 2019, and the dotted black line is every weekend this year. And for the first time in 2025, we dipped below, and kind of substantially below, what our weekend average has been since theaters reopened after the COVID-19 pandemic. So the box office this past weekend was worse than it has been the last few years. Some of those gains we talked about last week where we're doing better than 2024, well, they gave back about $50 million of it this past week. So not really where we want to be box office wise. Hopefully Mickey 17 and some of the other releases will help us to at least get closer to the red line for this upcoming weekend. But yeah, this has not been a fantastic start to the year. Before we get to the ratings for the Oscars, let's talk about Captain America Brave New World, because it is still kind of climbing up the charts when it comes to the MCU. When we look at the franchise tracker for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Brave New World is actually still 33 out of 35. It's just under the Eternals, so it will pass the Eternals probably today at the box office. I think this movie is going to struggle to get to $200 million, especially if it keeps dropping like it does. Maybe it can get there, but, you know, again, this is just not a stellar box office performance. When we look at the MCU as far as the inflation-adjusted gross, Captain America Brave New World is at number 34 out of 35. It's about $20 million behind what the Eternals gross would be once you adjust it for inflation. And looking at the profitability breakdown, I showed you this last week. By my latest estimates, Captain America Brave New World is still about $116 million shy of breaking even in the theatrical window, which is a goal that I think every movie would like to reach, to not lose money theatrically. And I honestly don't see an avenue for the movie to get to profitability theatrically. And I got some feedback last week about listing the budget of Captain America Brave New World at $180 million. Several people saying, well, you know it's higher than that because of the reshoots. I've read this report, etc. I understand that. I'm sure that if the reshoots were as extensive as we've heard, that the budget may very well be higher, but I have to go by the number that we know, the number that's been reported, the number that journalists have been able to find out. A lot of people saying, well, you know, it was really a $250 million budget or a $280 million budget, which it very well might be, but I can't go to the school of dude, trust me, when I am reporting numbers. If I do see reporting about a higher budget for Captain America Brave New World that has some actual data behind it, some sources behind it, then of course I will adjust it. But I try not to report too much on rumor without at least flagging it as a rumor, as I did last week with the Kathleen Kennedy story, and there's been kind of some murkiness that is added to that. When we talk about charts, when we talk about the numbers here on the show, I try to go off of, as close as I can, the facts as we know them. That $180 million number is the fact as we know it right now in Captain America Brave New World, but as always, I'm keeping my ear to the ground and I will update if I need to. I gave some praise to Neon earlier, and they actually have 2 movies in active release that are among their 10 highest grossing of all time domestically. Anora, which they brought back out into a lot of theaters for the Oscars, and then The Monkey, which is currently in the top 5. And right now, The Monkey is the 4th highest grossing film in the history of Neon as a distributor, just ahead of Ferrari. It actually moved up a couple spots from last week. It's about $5.5 million behind I, Tonya for that 3rd spot. Anora actually would have moved up to number 5, but it got bumped back a position by The Monkey, so it stays in number 6, and Immaculate moves from number 5 to number 7. But Neon has done a very good job of increasing their footprint, of marketing their films, and they currently have 2 movies that are pretty big hits, especially by their standards, at the box office. But there are other standards when we look at movies, and I want to look at how Anora stacks up against the other Best Picture winners over the last 10 years. This has not been a run of especially high grossing movies that have won Best Picture over the last decade, but Anora, even by that standard, is still pretty low. It's at number 8 out of the last 10 with its $15.9 million gross. That's ahead of only Nomadland, which had a nominal theatrical release during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Coda, which didn't really have a theatrical release at all. Apple certainly didn't report any numbers that it might have brought in. So it's essentially ahead of 2 streaming movies, Moonlight, Spotlight, Parasite, The Shape of Water, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Green Book are all ahead of it. And really, Oppenheimer, when you look at it, is the only one of the last 10 Best Picture winners that has gone over $100 million at the box office that you could really say was a transcendent movie as far as being a mainstream Hollywood hit. I mean, Green Book, Everything Everywhere All at Once, they did have wide appeal, but I would say that they didn't really break out into the overall mainstream. And I think that we are seeing that when we look at the ratings for the Academy Awards. We did get the ratings for the Oscars yesterday, and let's look at where this ceremony fell as opposed to several of the other ceremonies. We're actually going to look at Academy Award ratings since the year 2000. As you can see, when the chart starts in the year 2000, the Academy Awards were bringing 46.52 million viewers. That's actually down quite a bit from the most watched Oscar telecast of all time, which was the year that Titanic won Best Picture in 1998. That was well over 50 million viewers. And you can see that, as happens many years, the viewership fluctuated based on the movies. So 46.5 million back in 2000. It dropped to 33 million in 2003. But in 2004, which was the year that Return of the King dominated, it shot back up to 43.56 million. And that's the pattern we saw until around 2015. In 2015, it dropped below 40 million. I don't think the ceremony will ever get back above 40. Then the numbers just kept dropping until, as you can see, the year 2021, when the bottom just dropped out. That was the year that you had the Union Station ceremony, the year after the COVID-19 pandemic. Just 10.4 million people watched the Oscars in 2021. There was a rebound in 2022 at 16.5 million. Ratings went up in 2023 to 18.75. Last year in 2024, they went up again to 19.5 million. But this year's Oscars ceremony dropped. The first time that the awards have dropped since they really hit rock bottom in 2021. It dropped down to 18 million. And I think that you can attribute that to a lot of things. Number one, you didn't have an Oppenheimer or a Barbie that was in serious awards contention. You had Wicked, you had Dune Part 2, you had some popular movies, but I don't think that they were ever really considered to be serious contenders. You had a lot of smaller films, so the overall general public interest is going to be lower. There were all of the issues watching on Hulu, the fact that the stream crashed, it cut off the end. I'm sure that cost the Oscars some viewership. But in general, I don't think the Academy was looking for the numbers to drop this year, because regardless of circumstance, when you look at these numbers, we are looking at historically low ratings for any phase, really, of the Academy Awards, and I'm sure that they want to at least try to keep getting it back up to that 20 million plus threshold if they can. I don't honestly know if they can right now. And it's a complex picture. I think ratings have dropped because of the media landscape, because people's attention is more fractured than ever. I think ratings have dropped because overall theater attendance has dropped. I think ratings have dropped because studios generally aren't making Oscar contenders out of the big blockbuster movies that really capture everybody's attention. You don't have movies like a Forrest Gump or a Return of the King. I mean, Oppenheimer was the closest that we've had in quite some time. And so I think that the studios have to look at what they're making and say, hey, is there stuff that we can make that will coexist with the smaller indie films, but maybe also compete with them for Academy Awards that might draw more eyeballs into the Oscars? I really don't think it's about returning to the past. I don't think the Oscars can do that anymore. I think what they have to focus on right now is surviving in the new reality, much like the movie theaters themselves. They were doing well over the last few years. There was a little bit of a setback this year, but we'll see what they have in store for 2026. But let's talk a little bit about some more numbers around the show itself. First of all, last week, I asked the members here on the channel, what movie do you think will win Best Picture at the Oscars on Sunday? And 50% of the people that voted called it right. 50% said that Anora would win, 24% backed Conclave, 19% said that The Brutalist would win, and 7% said that one of the other nominees would win. So about half of the voters were able to call that correctly. And I wanted to mention something about Anora, because this is something else I didn't know when I was doing my main recap. I didn't go deep down into the reaction that people had to the awards, but something that I consistently saw was about Mikey Madison and her win for Best Actress, and many people saying, well, this is just a repetition of what The Substance was saying, that Hollywood always recognizes the young actress and they always shove the older actress aside. And personally, I think that that is discounting what I thought was a fantastic performance from Mikey Madison. I thought Demi Moore was great as well, but I think it legitimately was okay that it was a coin flip because they both were great. But this show is about numbers. So I wanted to dig into those numbers and see, is that true? Do the Academy Awards, when it comes to Best Actress, often push aside the older actresses in order to give the award to the ingenue? So I turned this into my Charts with Dan trivia question for this week. The question is, since 1980, how many times has the Best Actress Oscar winner been under the age of 30, which I think would be the age where people might say, oh, they're the ingenue, they're the fresh face. I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. It's tough. I actually had to go back. I couldn't do it off the top of my head. I had to go back in the records and look myself. But let's take a look at the numbers. And of the 46 Oscar ceremonies since 1980, 12 times the winner of the Best Actress Oscar has been under the age of 30. Of course, we had Mikey Madison at this year's ceremony, Emma Stone winning for La La Land back in 2017, Brie Larson winning for Room in 2016, Jennifer Lawrence winning for Silver Linings Playbook in 2013, Natalie Portman winning for Black Swan in 2011, Reese Witherspoon winning for Walk the Line in 2006, Charlize Theron winning for Monster in 2004, Hilary Swank winning her first Oscar for Boys Don't Cry back in the year 2000, Gwyneth Paltrow the year before for Shakespeare in Love in 1999. Jodie Foster won 2 Oscars before she was 30, one for Silence of the Lambs in 1992 and one for The Accused in 1989, and Marlee Matlin won for Children of a Lesser God in 1987. So the Academy Award for Best Actress has gone to an actress under 30 12 out of the last 46 times. That's 26.1%. But I also looked at how many times the Oscar has gone to an actress over 50 when it comes to Best Actress. And an actress over 50 has won 10 out of the last 46 times. That's 21.7%. Had Demi Moore won last night, those numbers would be exactly even, 11 out of 46 times. So I understand the instinct maybe if you're rooting for Demi Moore to say, oh, well, this is the substance written out in real life. But the numbers actually indicate that actresses over 50 are winning almost as much as actresses under 30. And really the majority of the Best Actress awards are going to actors between the age of 30 to 50 years old. So, it may be something that's nice to post on social media or Reddit or wherever, but the numbers actually say that this isn't exactly a fair criticism of the Academy. Adrien Brody also won for Best Actor over 20 years after his first win for The Pianist, and that got me thinking of a member question for this week. That question is, which Best Actor winner from 20 plus years ago would you like to see get a second Oscar? And I picked 4 that I think could reasonably be in contention. The 4 options are Russell Crowe, who won for Gladiator but has not won a Best Actor Oscar since, Nicolas Cage, who won for Leaving Las Vegas, Al Pacino, who won back in the 90s for Scent of a Woman, and Jamie Foxx, who won for Ray. So out of those 4, Russell Crowe, Nicolas Cage, Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx, who would you like to see get a second Academy Award for Best Actor? And if you want to weigh in on that poll and you're not yet a member here on the channel, depending on how you're watching the video, there might be a button for you to hit to become a channel member, or there's definitely a link down in the description below. I'd love to have you join. You also get early access to a lot of my videos, as well as custom badges and emoji to use down in the comments section. So please come be a member, and I'd love to hear your voice in this poll and all the other ones that I run. We have a lot more numbers to get to, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for this week's show. This episode's brought to you by Factor. It's getting warmer, which means it's time to start getting ready for spring. And if you want to start optimizing your nutrition this year, I recommend Factor. Factor sends meals right to your door that are fully prepared and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. That's right, no prep, no cooking, just eating from choices that cover 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every single week. You can try Calorie Smart if you're trying to eat fewer calories, Protein Plus if you're looking to hit the gym, or even Factor's Keto Meals, which based on a randomized controlled clinical trial helped people lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks depending on diet and exercise. And Factor isn't just a 1 meal a day option, they also offer smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and other add-ons to fill out your day no matter what you like to eat. I was just looking at what I could order coming up next. On the keto menu, there's a great sun-dried tomato chicken, and under Protein Plus, there's a Fiesta salmon that looks really tasty. What I like is that I can pick and choose the options that I want based on the diet that I want to eat weekly. So if I decide to go Calorie Smart for a week, I can, but there's nothing stopping me from loading up on some extra protein the next week. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Let's turn now from domestic affairs to the top 5 movies at the international box office. This is all markets outside of the US and Canada. Nudja 2 remains easily the #1 film internationally with another $66.1 million. Captain America Brave New World brings in another $18.8 million. Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, is really doing well theatrically outside of the domestic market. It brings in 15.6 million. Mickey 17 opened in some territories, including South Korea, home to director Bong Joon-ho. It brought in $9 million, and Detective Chinatown 1900 brought in another 6.6 million. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with the domestic numbers, we get our top 5 films worldwide. And Ne Zha 2 brought in another $67.8 million. It was its first big drop from weekend to weekend, 56.7%. Its total through Sunday is at 1.99 billion with a B dollars. It's now over $2 billion if you include Monday's grosses. Captain America Brave New World dropped 46.8%, bringing in another 33.8 million worldwide. Its worldwide total now just under 350 million. Bridget Jones' Might About the Boy, a 25.1% drop, another good hold for $15.6 million. Its worldwide box office total now nearing $100 million. The Monkey dropped about 44.4%, bringing in 11.5 million. Its worldwide total now at 38.2 million. And Paddington in Peru re-enters the top 5. It dropped 31.7% for a $9.7 million weekend worldwide. Its worldwide total, which stretches back to its release in some markets back in 2024, is currently at $164.3 million. And when we look at the all-time highest grossing films worldwide, Ne Zha 2 has now moved past Spider-Man No Way Home, just under that $2 million barrier. It looks like it's going to pass Avengers Infinity War for number 6 and Star Wars The Force Awakens for number 5. I don't know if it's got the gas to get up to Titanic at number 4, but still, we could be looking at a top 5 all-time worldwide hit. If you've missed my previous reporting on Ne Zha 2 and its grosses, I would refer you back to my previous episodes. But basically, I am not a doubter. I don't sit here and say that these aren't real numbers. I've seen no indication that they are fake. And honestly, I think that the movie's success here in the United States, which is far and above what we've really seen from a Chinese film that isn't picked up by a major distributor or isn't a martial arts film or something out of Hong Kong, just speaks to, and I think validates the fact that it's done so well, especially in China, because there's obviously something about this movie that's driving people out to the theaters more than they have traditionally for Chinese releases, both domestically here in the United States and also in China. This is the franchise tracker for the MCU worldwide. Captain America Brave New World is currently at number 33 out of 35 at $341.7 million. It's about $29 million behind Captain America the First Avenger. That would be a moral victory for Brave New World if it could pass the global gross of the first Captain America film, which of course starred Chris Evans. Let's return now to the domestic marketplace and look at what I call our specialty charts, and we'll start with the per theater averages for the past weekend. At number 1 was The Accidental Getaway Driver, which made $8,807 per theater in 4 theaters. This was a movie that played at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival about a taxi driver held hostage by convicts. It won the directing prize in the dramatic competition at Sundance for Sing J. Lee, but the fact that it's just now hitting theaters 2 years after that festival just shows how hard it is for a lot of these smaller films to finally make their way into theaters. In second place was Captain America Brave New World, which brought in $6,862 per theater. Then we had Ne Zha 2, at least according to the consensus box office reporting I could find, which brought in $2,850 per theater in 600 theaters. Playing in one theater was one of my favorite movies that I saw in 2024, which is Hundreds of Beavers. It's still a road show that plays different theaters around the country and really around the world, and it brought in $2,698 over the weekend in one theater. That's a great movie. I'd love to see it with a crowd. And in fifth place was the new movie Last Breath, which brought in $2,601 per theater in 3,018 theaters. Looking at the top films in limited release, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer, at number 1 was Ne Zha 2 with another $1.7 million. In second place was Mobile Suit Gundam, and I sourced the comments, or I said I didn't know how it was pronounced, and I got 2 different pronunciations. I was told it's pronounced G-Quax and G-Cux. So whatever it is, Mobile Suit Gundam GQUUX beginning, playing in 784 theaters, brought in about $880,000 over the weekend. My Dead Friend Zoe also opened in 780 theaters. It brought in $740,000. I'm Still Here played in 512 theaters. It brought in another $600,000. And Chava, in an unknown number of theaters, brought in another $574,000. Looking at the annual domestic box office for 2025, these are 2025 releases. Captain America Brave New World remains the #1 movie of the year at $163.5 million, followed by Dogman, One of Them Days, and Den of Thieves 2. Paddington in Peru moves up to the top 5 with $31.3 million. Flight Risk and Heart Eyes both move down one spot. The Monkey debuts on the overall domestic chart for the year at $24.6 million. That bumps Wolfman down one spot and Companion down to number 10, and Love Hurts is now out of the overall domestic box office for the year. And I wanted to do a quick update on the 2024 worldwide box office. Many of you pointed this out last week. I just didn't get it into the show. But we do now have the final 10 movies at the 2024 box office, and it is now an all Hollywood lineup because Sonic the Hedgehog 3 bumped out the last Chinese film that was at number 10 to become the 10th highest grossing movie worldwide, released in 2024. It's at $486 million, and it follows Kung Fu Panda 4, Godzilla Kong the New Empire, Mufasa the Lion King, and Dune Part 2. The top 5 are Wicked, Despicable Me 4, Moana 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Inside Out 2, the highest grossing film worldwide of 2024. But this is going to be the last top 10 probably for a while that you're going to see without a Chinese film, because there is most definitely going to be one in the top 10 for 2025. And I actually have my first look at the 2025 worldwide box office right now. It takes a while for people to compile this data, for me to find enough to confirm what the top 10 even is. And this was even still difficult to find. But as best as I can measure, these are the top 10 films worldwide so far in 2025. At number 1, of course, is Ne Zha 2 at $1.99 billion, really $2 billion at this point. Detective Chinatown 1900 is in second place at close to $500 million. Then we have Captain America Brave New World in third. Another Chinese film, Creation of the Gods 2, in fourth place at $169.2 million. Then Dogman at $113.1 million. Boonie Bears Future Reborn is in sixth place at just over $100 million. These are, I think, all releases that were put out around the Chinese New Year celebration. Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy is at number 7, followed by another Chinese film, Legends of the Condor. Then we have Chava from India at number 9 at $57.1 million. And Den of Thieves 2 Pantera rounding out the top 10 at $56.7 million. Of course, I'm still sourcing and compiling this data, so if there are updates to make beyond the usual updates to this chart, I will make them and bring them to you. So that wraps up all of our box office and Oscar news. Before I wrap up, let's take a look at the latest news we have from the world of streaming. And we'll start with the latest numbers from Netflix. This covers the week of February 17th through the 23rd. And the #1 most watched program globally on Netflix was American Murder. Gabby Petito, True Crime, continues to do well on Netflix. It brought in 31.3 million views. The Netflix original series Zero Day, which had an all-star cast, brought in 19.13 million views, good enough for second place. La Dolce Villa is in third place at 14.12 million views. Then we had Uncharted, the Tom Holland movie from a few years ago, which comes in fourth place at 10.5 million views. Honeymoon Crasher is a holdover in fifth place. Despicable Me 3 hits the charts, one of 3 Minions films that is on this list at 7.93 million views. Cassandra's at number 7. In eighth place is To Catch a Killer, which is a 2023 Shailene Woodley, Ben Mendelsohn film about a cop trying to find a rogue shooter. It brought in 6.71 million views. Then we have Minions in ninth place and Despicable Me 2 in 10th place. This is a good week for me to avoid the global top 10 over on Netflix. Looking at the most watched programs so far this year in 2025, Back in Action remains number 1 at 130.89 million views, ahead of Squid Game Season 2, which has brought in 124.48 million views. That's just the viewership since December 30th of 2024. There's more that happened when it premiered a few days earlier. Advitam and Missing You are at numbers 3 and 4. The Night Agent Season 2 moves into the top 5 at 43.9 million views. That bumps The Secret Life of Pets down to number 6. And La Dolce Villa debuts at number 9 on the list at 33.94 million views. That bumps Carry On down to number 10. Let's take a look now at the Nielsen numbers. Now, these are domestic numbers only, and they're delayed by about a month because that's how long it takes for Nielsen to get the data out to us. So this covers the week of January 27th through February 2nd of 2025. At number 1, as far as the most watched streaming movies, was the Amazon Prime original You're Cordially Invited, starring Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon. It brought in 13.7 million hours watched. Back in Action on Netflix is in second at 8.8 million hours watched, followed by The Wild Robot and Moana. Here, which is part of Sony's first look deal with Netflix to put their theatrical films on Netflix as far as their first streaming destination, debuts at number 5 at 3.75 million hours watched. Then we have The Menu at number 6, Saturday Night at number 7, that brought in just over 3 million hours watched. Blink Twice on Amazon Prime is at number 8 with 2.9 million hours watched. Then we have Scream 6, which is available on various services. I think it became available on Netflix at number 9 at 2.45 million hours watched. And The Boss Baby, which we often see on this chart, rounding out the top 10. As far as the most watched streaming shows by total viewership for January 27th through February 2nd, The Night Agent remains an easy number 1 at 48.7 million hours watched. The Recruit makes a return to the chart at number 2 with its new season at 19.8 million hours watched. Younger continues to be a big draw on Netflix at 17.2 million hours watched. Bluey is in 4th place, followed by Bob's Burgers in 5th. NCIS returns to the chart at number 6, followed by Grey's Anatomy. American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson, another true crime show, is at number 8 with just over 12 million hours watched. Law & Order SVU is at number 9, and The Big Bang Theory is at number 10. Those are both returning shows that are perennial favorites. Looking at the top streaming shows as far as watch time per available episode, the Hulu series Paradise actually barely takes the top spot with 3.06 million hours watched for the 3 available episodes that week. American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson is narrowly in second at 3.01 million hours watched per episode. The Night Agent puts up a good number at 2.44 million hours watched per episode. The Recruit is at 1.42 million hours watched per episode. And then we have American Primeval rounding out the top 5. Beast Games stays in the top 10 with 968,750 hours watched per episode. And Severance Season 2 continues to do very well as we look at the numbers from the early episodes of its second season. 773,000 hours watched per episode. I don't think it even made the charts in its first season. Landman is at number 8, Squid Game is at number 9, and The Traitors rounds out the top 10. And a couple of changes to make on the most watched original streaming series chart as far as Nielsen numbers reported since 2020. Squid Game moves up to number 9, which moves the Great British Baking Show down to number 10. We've got numbers coming in for Cobra Kai, so I expect to see that show move up. And really, there are upcoming seasons for a lot of shows that are on this chart that could change these numbers. And looking at the most watched streaming programs overall for 2025 this year, I'm going to start breaking it down by series, movie, etc. pretty soon. Younger moves into the top 10 at number 8. The Night Agent, now the second most watched streaming program as of early February, with over 100 million hours watched, along with Squid Game. Those are the only 2 programs with over 100 million hours so far this year. Bluey, Landman, and Bob's Burgers round out the top 5. American Primeval is at number 9, and Back in Action for one more week, the only movie on the list, at number 10. And that wraps us out for this week. Before we go, though, I want to give you a look at some things that might be of interest to you on streaming and in theaters this upcoming week. First of all, tonight is the debut of Daredevil Born Again on Disney+. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio return, and the first 2 episodes will be available at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. I'm going to give you a review of those first 2 episodes after I check them out. On Wednesday, Purple Rain, the Prince classic, will be receiving a one-night-only re-release in select AMC theaters, so check your local listings on Wednesday night if you want to check out Purple Rain on the big screen. On Thursday, The Traitors Season 3 will wrap up on Peacock, and then we have several options in theaters for this upcoming weekend. First of all, on Friday, the long-awaited, much-delayed, much-moved Mickey 17 will finally open in theaters around the country. I am really excited to see this because Bong Joon-ho does crazy stuff, Robert Pattinson does crazy stuff. Strangely, there were no advanced screenings regionally anywhere around me. So I'm just going to go see it on Thursday. I'll have my review for you on Friday. Also opening in wide release is Paul W.S. Anderson's In the Lost Lands. He directs and writes, along with stars Mila Jovovich and Dave Bautista, who are the leads in this tale of demons and sorcery. It's based on a short story by George R.R. Martin. Also in wide release is a Canadian animated film called Night of the Zoopocalypse about zoo animals who turn into zombies. It features the voice of David Harbour. In limited release is a film that's being handled domestically by A24 called On Becoming a Guinea Fowl. It's the latest from Zambian director Rungano Nyoni, who won Best Director in the Cannes Un Certain Regard section for this movie. It's about a woman who finds her uncle dead and follows the mystery. So if you're looking for some of that A24 goodness and an acclaimed film, see if this movie's playing in a theater near you. Also opening in many theaters around the country is a movie called The Rule of Jenny Penn, which I hadn't heard of until today, but now I think I'm going to check it out. John Lithgow stars as an insane person who menaces an assisted living facility with a creepy baby doll puppet, and only Jeffrey Rush can stop him. It apparently caused quite a stir at Fantastic Fest last year. I think it's playing near me. I might have to make the time. Also opening in limited release is Seven Veils, which is writer-director Adam Agoyan's latest film. It stars Amanda Seyfried as a theater director who tries to mount a show from her past with disturbing results. And on Netflix this Friday, we have Chaos, the Manson Murders, which is directed by acclaimed documentarian Errol Morris, who takes a new look at the facts surrounding Charles Manson and explores some possible new theories. And on the opposite side of the spectrum on Netflix, we have Plankton the Movie, which is another SpongeBob spinoff movie that's alone on Netflix Island due to complex streaming contracts, I guess. And if you're looking for a theatrical release from 2024 that I highly recommend, Heretic will begin streaming on Max this Friday as well. Also on Max this upcoming Sunday is the debut of Season 4 of The Righteous Gemstones. It is the final season of this series. I've heard good things. I haven't actually watched it, but if you are a Righteous Gemstones fan, this Sunday is premiere night. And that's all I've got for you on this episode of Charts with Dan. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the description below for more information about Factor, the sponsor of this week's episode. And stay tuned right here for Daredevil reviews, Mickey 17 reviews, breaking news, box office, all of that stuff. Most of all, thank you for watching this episode. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.